She never thought she'd see him again, the man who made her feel invisible, worthless, less than human. But fate has a twisted sense of humor. When Vivian crosses paths with Brandon in a glittering Las Vegas mall, the past collides with her present in the most violent way imaginable. He thinks she's still that broken girl he could crush beneath his heel. He's wrong. Dead wrong. What he doesn't know is that the woman standing before him has rebuilt herself from ashes, and she's no longer alone. This is a story about reclaiming power, surviving abuse, and the moment karma finally catches up. Hit subscribe, drop a comment, and stay until the end. You won't believe what happens next. Vivian hit the marble floor hard. The shopping bags scattered around her, designer boxes sliding across the polished surface of the Crystal Gardens Mall. Pain shot through her hip and elbow where she'd tried to catch herself. For a moment, everything went silent, the ambient music, the chatter of shoppers, even her own breathing. Then reality crashed back in with the horrified gasps of bystanders and the sharp click of heels stopping mid-stride. She looked up from the floor, dazed, and saw Brandon standing over her. His face was twisted with that familiar expression she'd spent 2 years trying to forget, contempt mixed with something darker, something that had always made her feel small. His hand was still extended from the shove, fingers curled like he'd just disposed of trash. "You think you're better than me now?" Brandon's voice carried across the luxury boutique corridor, drawing more attention. "You think because you've got some money, some new clothes, that you're not the same pathetic fat girl I wasted my time on?" Vivian's mind raced backward to 15 minutes earlier, to the moment she'd turned the corner by Valentino and nearly collided with him. She'd recognized him instantly despite the years, the same sharp jawline, the same expensive cologne, the same entitled posture that screamed he owned whatever space he occupied. She'd frozen, her body remembering what her mind had tried to forget. "Brandon," she'd said, keeping her voice neutral, already calculating the fastest exit route. His eyes had traveled down her body slowly, deliberately, and she'd felt that old familiar shame trying to claw its way back into her chest. But something was different now. She stood straighter. She didn't shrink. "Vivian?" He'd laughed, but it wasn't friendly. "Wow. I almost didn't recognize you." "Well, I mean, I did." "You can't really miss." He gestured vaguely at her body, that cruel smile playing at his lips. She'd started to walk past him without responding, years of therapy teaching her that she didn't owe him anything, not explanation, not conversation, not even acknowledgement. But he'd stepped into her path. Hold on. "What? You're too good to talk to me now. After everything I did for you." His voice had risen, drawing stares from other shoppers. "I tried to help you, tried to make you better, and this is the thanks I get? Brandon, I need to go." She'd kept her voice calm steady. She'd practiced this moment in her mind 1,000 times, though she'd never really believed it would happen. "I have nothing to say to you." "Nothing to say?" He'd moved closer, invading her space the way he always had, using his height to intimidate. "That's rich. You know, I heard you moved to Vegas." "What, you became a call girl or something? That's how you're affording those bags." He'd pointed at her shopping, his lip curling. "Or did you find some desperate old man who doesn't mind?" "Stop." The word came out firmer than she'd intended, surprising both of them. "I don't know what you want from me, but I'm not doing this. I'm not that person anymore." Something had shifted in his expression then. The mocking superiority cracked, revealing the rage beneath. "Not that person? You'll always be that person. You think some fancy clothes change what you are? You think anyone's going to actually respect you? Love you?" He'd laughed, harsh and bitter. "I was the best thing that ever happened to you, and you were too stupid to appreciate it. I need you to step aside." Vivian had felt her heart pounding, but kept her voice level. "I'm leaving now." That's when he grabbed her arm. His fingers dug into her flesh hard enough to bruise, hard enough to leave marks she'd find later. She'd tried to pull away, and that's when he'd shoved her. Now, lying on the cold marble floor surrounded by her scattered purchases, Vivian felt something inside her crystallize. Not fear. Not shame. Anger. Pure, righteous anger at this man who had spent 2 years making her feel worthless and apparently thought he could still do it now. She started to push herself up, her palms flat against the smooth floor. Around her, she could hear murmurs from the crowd that had gathered. Did he just push her? Someone should call security. Oh my God, is she okay? Brandon took a step closer, standing over her, and she saw his foot pull back. Time seemed to slow. She saw the Italian leather of his shoe, saw the intention in his body language, and couldn't quite believe what was about to happen. Not here. Not in public. Not in a place with cameras and witnesses and... His foot connected with her ribs. The air left her lungs in a rush. Pain exploded across her side, sharp and stunning. She curled instinctively, protective, and heard screams from the crowd. Someone shouted for security. A woman was crying, saying, "Oh my God," over and over like a prayer. Brandon stood there, breathing hard, his face flushed. "You don't walk away from me," he said, his voice shaking with rage. "You don't get to just." "Sir, step back." A mall security guard was pushing through the crowd, hand on his radio. "Step back right now." But Brandon wasn't looking at the guard. He was looking past the crowd, his expression changing from rage to something else. Something that looked almost like fear. Vivian followed his gaze, still curled on the floor, still trying to breathe through the pain in her ribs. Through the dispersing crowd, she saw Suk walking toward them with purposeful strides. He moved like water, fluid and inevitable, his expression unreadable. He was dressed simply in black pants and a dark gray shirt, but there was something about the way he carried himself that made people instinctively move out of his way. Their eyes met, and Vivian saw the moment he assessed the situation. Saw her on the ground. Saw Brandon standing over her. Saw the fear and rage and protective instinct all flash across his face in the span of a heartbeat before his expression went completely blank. That blankness was more terrifying than any display of emotion could have been. "Vivian." His voice was soft as he knelt beside her, one hand hovering near her shoulder, but not touching, asking permission. "Are you hurt? Can you move?" She nodded, then winced as the movement sent fresh pain through her ribs. "I'm okay. Don't move yet." His eyes scanned her body, professional and clinical, checking for injury. Then he looked up at the security guard who'd frozen mid-step. "Call an ambulance." "And the police." "Now wait just a minute," Brandon started, but Suk rose to his feet in one smooth motion and turned to face him. "You will not speak," Suk said quietly. It wasn't a threat. It was a statement of fact, delivered with such absolute certainty that Brandon's mouth snapped shut. "You will not move. You will wait for the police to arrive, and you will accept the consequences of your actions." "Who the hell are you?" Brandon found his voice again, puffing up his chest. "Her pimp? Is that what this is? You think you can?" Suk moved faster than Vivian had ever seen him move. One moment he was standing 3 feet from Brandon, the next his hand was wrapped around Brandon's throat, and Brandon was being driven backward until his back hit the window of the Cartier store behind him. The glass rattled but didn't break. "I told you not to speak." Suk's voice remained calm, almost conversational. "I'm going to explain something to you once, and I need you to listen very carefully. That woman on the ground is my wife. You put your hands on her. You hurt her." In my world, there are consequences for such actions. Severe consequences. Brandon's face was turning red, his hands clawing at Suk's wrist, but he might as well have been trying to move a steel beam. I can't breathe. Yes, I'm aware. Suk tilted his head slightly. Here's what's going to happen. The police will arrive. You will confess to assault. You will not resist. You will not make excuses. You will accept full responsibility for what you've done. Do you understand? Brandon managed a jerky nod, his eyes bulging. Good. Suk released him, and Brandon collapsed to his knees, gasping for air. If you run, I will find you. If you lie, I will find you. If you ever come near my wife again, I will find you, and there will be no police to protect you. Are we clear? Yes, Brandon choked out. Yes, we're clear. Suk turned away from him as if he'd ceased to exist and returned to Vivian's side. His expression softened immediately, all that cold danger evaporating. The ambulance is coming. Can you tell me where it hurts? My ribs. My hip. My elbow. She tried to smile, to reassure him, but it came out as more of a grimace. I'm okay, really. I've had worse. Something flickered in his eyes at that pain, rage, guilt that she'd ever had to survive worse. That doesn't make this okay, he said gently. Nothing makes this okay. The mall security had multiplied, 3 guards now forming a loose perimeter around the scene. One was on his radio, giving updates. Another was keeping the crowd back, though dozens of people had their phones out, recording. The third was standing uncomfortably close to Brandon, who remained on his knees, one hand at his throat, staring at nothing. There's video, Vivian said suddenly. The mall has cameras. They'll see. They'll see exactly what happened, Suk confirmed. Multiple angles. Plus all these witnesses. He gestured at the crowd. You don't need to worry about that. The truth is very clear here. A woman pushed through the crowd, middle-aged with kind eyes and a Nordstrom bag. I saw everything, she announced to the security guards. That man verbally assaulted her, grabbed her, pushed her down, and then kicked her while she was on the ground. I have video on my phone. I'll testify. That was attempted murder as far as I'm concerned. It wasn't attempted murder, Brandon protested weakly, finding his voice again. She was my girlfriend. We have history. She was your girlfriend, Vivian said, surprised by how steady her own voice sounded. She was still on the ground, still in pain, but something inside her had shifted. Past tense. 3 years ago, I left you because you were abusive. What you just did proves I made the right choice. Abusive? Brandon's face flushed red again. I was trying to help you. You were a mess when I met you. No confidence, no style, eating yourself to death. I tried to make you better, and you tore me down every single day, Vivian interrupted, and now she did sit up, ignoring Suk's concerned sound of protest. The pain in her ribs flared, but she pushed through it. You criticized everything about me. My body, my food, my clothes, my friends, my dreams. You isolated me, controlled me, and made me believe I was lucky you were willing to be seen with me. That's not Brandon looked around at the crowd as if seeking support, but found only hostile stares. You're twisting everything. I loved you. I was trying to help. Love doesn't humiliate, Vivian said. Love doesn't shame. Love doesn't hit or push or kick. What you did wasn't love. It was control. It was abuse. And I spent 2 years in therapy learning to see it for what it was. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. Brandon's eyes darted toward the mall exits and Suk shifted his weight slightly, a subtle movement that blocked any escape route. Don't, Suk said quietly. Running will only make this worse for you. Worse. Brandon laughed, high and desperate. You threatened me. You assaulted me. I could press charges against you. You could try, Vivian agreed. But you grabbed my wife first. You pushed her. You kicked her while she was down. I simply restrained you to prevent further violence. Every camera in this mall will confirm that sequence of events, as will all these witnesses. He gestured to the crowd, which had grown to at least 30 people. Heads nodded. Several people called out confirmation. He's right. The psycho attacked her first. I got it all on video. Brandon seemed to deflate, the reality of his situation finally sinking in. Vivian, please, he said, and his voice took on that wheedling quality she remembered from the worst fights. Please, you know I didn't mean it. I just got emotional seeing you again. You know how we were. The passion. Please don't do this to me. Vivian met his eyes and felt nothing. No anger, no pain, no lingering attachment. Just a vast, peaceful emptiness where he used to live in her head. No, she said simply. I'm not protecting you anymore. I'm not making excuses for you. I'm not taking responsibility for your actions. You did this. You own it. And you're going to face the consequences. The paramedics arrived first, pushing through the crowd with a stretcher. A young woman knelt beside Vivian, asking questions, checking her pupils, gently probing her ribs. Vivian answered mechanically, her eyes still on Brandon. The police came next, 2 officers who took in the scene with the practiced eye of people who'd seen too much human ugliness. The older one, a black woman with gray in her hair and tired eyes, approached Vivian first. Ma'am, I'm Officer Chin. Can you tell me what happened here? Vivian told the story, her voice steady, sticking to facts. The paramedic continued her examination while Vivian spoke, nodding along, confirming the visible injuries matched the narrative. When Vivian finished, Officer Chin turned to the crowd. Anyone else see what happened? At least 15 hands went up. Officer Chen's eyebrows rose. All right, we're going to need statements from all of you. This might take a while. The younger officer, a Latino man barely out of his 20s, had moved to Brandon. Sir, I need you to stand up slowly and put your hands where I can see them. I want a lawyer, Brandon said. I'm not saying anything without a lawyer. That's your right, the officer agreed. But you're being detained for assault. Multiple witnesses, video evidence, visible injuries on the victim. You can remain silent, but you're not leaving. Brandon's face went white. You can't, this is insane. She's my ex-girlfriend. We had an argument. She's making it sound worse than it was. I watched you kick her while she was on the ground, Officer Chin said flatly. Battery, assault, possibly more depending on her injuries. Save your story for your lawyer. The younger officer produced handcuffs, and something in Brandon snapped. He lurched to his feet and tried to run, shoving past a security guard. He made it maybe 3 steps before Vivian was there, somehow having crossed the distance in a blink, one hand catching Brandon's collar and jerking him backward. Brandon's feet flew out from under him, and he hit the ground hard. I wouldn't, Vivian said mildly, pinning Brandon with one knee while the officers rushed over. Resisting arrest is another charge. The officers cuffed Brandon while he was down, reading him his rights in flat, professional tones. Brandon was crying now, ugly sobbing, pleading with anyone who would listen. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Please, Vivian, please tell them it was a mistake. I'll get help. I'll do therapy. Please. Vivian turned away, letting the paramedics help her onto the stretcher. Vivian appeared at her side immediately, his hand finding hers. I'm riding with her, he told the paramedics in a tone that brooked no argument. In the ambulance, Vivian lay back against the thin pillow and stared at the white ceiling. Her body hurt, but her mind felt strangely clear. Suk sat beside her, still holding her hand, his thumb tracing gentle circles on her palm. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for not killing him." A smile flickered at the corner of his mouth. It was tempting. Very tempting. "I know." She squeezed his hand. "But I didn't need you to kill him. I needed you to be there. To witness. To help me stand up after. You did that." "I should have been with you," he said, and there was guilt in his voice. "If I'd been there from the start, he would have found another time, another place. Or he wouldn't have had the courage to approach at all, and I would have spent the rest of my life looking over my shoulder, wondering." She turned her head to look at him. "This needed to happen. I needed to face him. To prove to myself that I'm not that scared girl anymore." "You were never a scared girl," Suk said firmly. "You were a survivor. There's a difference." At the hospital, they ran x-rays. Bruised ribs, not broken. Contusions on her hip and elbow. Nothing permanent, nothing that wouldn't heal. The doctor, an older man with gentle hands, documented everything carefully. "These photos will be used as evidence," he explained. "The police will need a full medical report. I have to ask, is this the first time this man has assaulted you?" "First time he's put his hands on me in 3 years," Vivian said. "When we were together, it was mostly psychological abuse. Control. Degradation. He never hit me then. I think he was too smart for that. Knew it would leave marks." The doctor nodded sadly, as if he'd heard this story too many times. Abuse escalates. You were right to leave when you did. And right to press charges now. After he left, Suk pulled a chair close to her hospital bed. "Tell me what you need," he said. "Anything." Vivian thought about it. "I need you to promise me something." "Anything." "Promise me you won't have him killed." Suk was quiet for a long moment. "Why?" "Because I don't want him to be a martyr in his own story. I don't want him to become the victim. I want him to live with what he did. To face the consequences. To have this on his record forever. Death would be too easy. He hurt you. Yes. And now he's going to pay for it through the legal system. That matters more than revenge." Suk studied her face, then nodded slowly. "If that's what you want. But if he ever comes near you again, then we'll deal with it together," Vivian interrupted gently. "Like we do everything." They kept her overnight for observation. The next morning, Officer Chin came by with more questions and a stack of papers. "We've charged him with battery, assault, and resisting arrest," she said. "The DA might add more charges depending on how they want to prosecute. With the video evidence and witness testimony, this is pretty open and shut." His lawyer's already talking about a plea deal. "What kind of deal?" Vivian asked. "Community service, anger management, restraining order, probation. He'd avoid jail time but have it on his record." Vivian shook her head. "No deal. I want this to go to trial if necessary. I want a judge and jury to see what he did. I want it public." Officer Chen's expression softened with approval. "That's your right. I'll inform the DA. For what it's worth, I think you're making the right choice. Men like him need to face real consequences." After she left, Vivian's phone buzzed with messages. Her therapist checking in. Her sister, who'd seen the news. Friends from her support group. The outpouring of support was overwhelming. But there was also another message, from a number she didn't recognize. "You ruined my life. I hope you're happy." She showed it to Suk, who immediately made a call. Within an hour, she had a new phone number. Within 2 hours, Brandon had another charge added, criminal harassment. The trial happened 3 months later. Vivian wore a navy suit, her hair styled professionally, her makeup subtle. She walked into that courtroom with Suk beside her and felt no fear. The video played on a screen for the jury. The witnesses testified. The medical reports were entered into evidence. Brandon's lawyer tried to argue provocation, tried to paint Vivian as vindictive, tried to suggest she'd somehow invited the attack. But the evidence was too clear. The video showed everything. It took the jury 4 hours to come back with a guilty verdict on all counts. Brandon got 18 months in prison, 5 years probation, mandatory anger management, and a permanent restraining order. His lawyer filed an appeal, but it was denied. Vivian didn't attend the sentencing. She didn't need to. She was already at the next chapter of her life. 6 months after the trial, she stood in front of a mirror in her home office, practicing a presentation. She'd started a nonprofit for survivors of domestic abuse, using her own money and BM6's connections to create something real, something that could help others the way she wished she'd been helped. BM6 leaned against the doorframe, watching her with that slight smile he got when he was proud. "You're going to be amazing," he said. "I'm terrified," she admitted. "Public speaking isn't exactly my comfort zone." You faced down your abuser in a packed mall and then testified against him in court. You can handle a room full of donors. She laughed, turning to face him. "When you put it that way." He crossed the room and pulled her into his arms, careful as always, asking permission with his body language before making contact. "I'm proud of you. For all of it. For surviving. For thriving. For turning your pain into purpose. I couldn't have done it without you." "Yes, you could have," he said firmly. "I just made it easier. The strength was always yours." Later that night, lying in bed with BM6 asleep beside her, Vivian thought about Brandon. She wondered if he thought about what he'd done, if he'd learned anything, if he'd changed. She hoped so, for the sake of any woman who might enter his life in the future. But mostly, she realized, she didn't think about him at all anymore. He'd taken up too much space in her head for too long. He didn't get to live there rent-free anymore. She'd reclaimed that space, filled it with her own voice, her own worth, her own power. The girl who'd been pushed to the ground in that mall wasn't weak. She'd never been weak. She'd been wounded, yes. Hurt, absolutely. But she'd gotten back up. She'd told her truth. She'd demanded justice. And she'd won. Not because of the verdict or the jail time or the restraining order, though those mattered. She'd won because she'd stopped defining herself by what Brandon had done to her and started defining herself by what she'd done for herself. She'd rebuilt her life brick by brick. She'd found someone who treated her with respect and gentleness. She'd done the hard work of therapy and self-examination. She'd learned to love herself, not despite her body, but as her body, in all its curves and strength and resilience. Brandon had tried to break her, and instead he'd revealed just how unbreakable she truly was. That was her victory. Vivian rolled over, curling into BM6's warmth, and fell asleep with a smile on her face. The past couldn't hurt her anymore. She'd made sure of that. If this story resonated with you, if it moved you or made you think, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Share it with someone who needs to hear that they're stronger than they know. Drop a comment below with your thoughts. We read every single one. And remember, survival isn't weakness. Speaking up isn't revenge. Justice isn't cruelty. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is simply refuse to be silent. Thank you for watching until the end. Your support means everything.